Hello, and welcome back to the Live Reality Game Podcast. My name is Stephen Stewart, and we're here for more behind the game coverage. So, in this series, I talk to game creators and game makers about their series, both the origin of the series, but also the challenges and what they've learned along the way. And today, I'm going to be talking about a game that is also near and dear to my heart, Surviving Bloomington, with the host and showrunner himself, Casey Winecki. Casey, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. I've been looking forward to getting on here and talking to you about this for a long time now, even before you announced that first episode with the Survivor New York uh, episode, because we kind of talked about getting on here and talking about like our thoughts on a bunch of stuff. So I've been excited about this for a long time. And then since I listened to the episodes, I've been just getting even more ideas.
Well, definitely the one of the ideas behind this podcast was sparked from playing in Surviving Bloomington this summer and conversations with Melanie. Actually, it was really just like, where else can we go? What else can we do? And this kind of definitely came out of my experience in Bloomington. No spoiler because the cast is live online, so I did play. We just the episodes are not out yet. Um,
Yep.
but but for those who are tuning in, Casey, do you want to share what we'll do at the end of the podcast?
Yeah, so if you stick around for this podcast, at the end here, we're going to air the first 13 minutes of episode 1 of season 6 of Surviving Bloomington. It's the prologue, so you'll get to kind of see the way my brain works in terms of like editing and stuff, and we'll talk about that more. But if you stick around, there will be a like nice little sneak preview of what's to come this winter.
For sure. And for those of you who are listening to the audio only format, my recommendation is come back to the Facebook or the YouTube version where I will leave the video in. Just the video doesn't persist very well in audio format only. But dig in some things, Casey, I neglected to mention some of your other accolades. You're a veteran of Surviving Grillfoot. You're a veteran of the Ohio Mall, and I believe also Pacific Coast Trail, correct?
Pacific Crest Trail, and then also this past summer, a veteran of Can You Survive charity event.
Okay, awesome. Okay, you played that was the Blood versus the Water game, correct?
Yeah, I played with my sister.
Okay. How was her experience from that?
Difficult. She did not. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, and I tried warning her because she's not as big of a. She watches the show casually, but she
Mhm.
doesn't know anything about like the LRG world. And kind of me applying for that was my first step of introducing my family to this thing that I do that is like a big part of my life, and they think it's just like a weird Survivor thing, but like when you host these games, it actually consumes your entire
Mhm.
life. And this was my first time kind of really showing one of them like what it feels like when you're in it. And she was blown out of the water. I remember her eyes when she came back from her first tribal council. Her eyes were wide as saucer, and she was like, Casey, I didn't think it was going to be like that. And I was like, I tried telling you. So she didn't last quite as long as me, but she definitely fell in love with it, and she's going to be around for to at least help out on crew and Surviving Bloomington next year, and hopefully a little more after that.
That's awesome. I'm glad it was overall a positive experience for her.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it helped that I ended up making it pretty far into the game, and we were able to kind of nerd out about that.
So I want to kind of start with the history of Surviving Bloomington. On the Surviving Bloomington website, it kind of discusses the very first season, that 2018 season. But what led to that season happening? Was this just an idea you had, or was it a group of friends saying we want to do this together? How did this come about?
Well, so people who meet me kind of start to recognize that I'm like a little bit crazy, and especially crazy whenever it comes to Survivor. And I've been that way basically since I was 7 years old. I'm a day one fan. I've been watching since I was a
Mhm.
child. Um, and for a long time, like it actually got a little bit unhealthy to where like I had like I had so much invested in this idea of like I need to get on the show. I need to get on the show to like prove like I'm obsessed with this thing. Blah 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 blah. Um, but then like around 2018, I kind of I moved to Bloomington first off out of Louisville, Kentucky, and I moved to Bloomington. My new group of friends they played board games like Mafia and Avalon and
Mhm.
all these other board games, whereas my old group of friends didn't really do that as much. So I was kind of introduced into this new world of board games. And then I kind of just decide like one day I just kind of decided like if I can't be on Survivor, like I need something to do with all of this Survivor energy. Like I've got to do something with this. And so I asked my friends in my friend group, and I was like, hey, if I put a game on, if I designed one, would you all play? And like they all said yes, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And I didn't think it was going to happen at all. I had a full cast of 16, 8 men, 8 women, which is crazy for a first season, especially back then before like
Mm-hmm.
really used. um, and it was basically like a 36-hour game. So we started at like in like the morning of a Saturday and then ended the night of Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, I designed it. That the challenges were kind of rinky dink, blah blah blah, kind of like you'd expect from most first seasons. Um, and I didn't think my friends were gonna. I didn't think everyone was gonna show up, and I definitely didn't think everyone was gonna play all the way through. But once we got about like 2 or 3 rounds in, and I noticed how seriously everyone was taking it, I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is like they actually care about this in a weird way. And that's what happens in every game. Once you've made it through like 2 or 3 rounds, you're like, all right, I'm here. Like I'm not going to be the next one to go. And then
Mm-hmm.
like the snowball effect kind of happens whether you're a fan or not. And that happened with my friend group. And then all of them ended up becoming fans because of the game. And afterwards, they all told me like, Casey, if you ever do this again, count me in. Like they were all so gung ho about it, and it was so much fun, and there was an amazing story to the season and everything that I was just kind of like, I got to do this again.
So, who were you grabbing? Were all 16 people friends, or were these like friends of friends, or how did you find like these people for that first season?
Well, like I said, the group that I was kind of when I moved into Bloomington, I was kind of like adopted into an already established friend group, and
Mm-hmm.
they played a bunch of board games as it is. So they're already kind of in that strategy mindset. And then I had a few people who loved camping and stuff, so I kind of just like combined those groups, which were already combined to a certain extent. But basically it was just I had the right people who like were willing
Mm-hmm.
to do it. And I like I said, leading up to it, I did not think that it was like I didn't press them as hard as like I do now, my contestants and stuff. But basically I just kind of lucked out into getting adopted into a friend group who were willing to come out and do this thing over the weekend. Like they just, I mean, like we were, it was basically they just thought it was a camping trip, and then once the game started, they morphed into game mode, but so there people. If you watch season 5, there's a few people from season 5, like James. He's like my best friend. He's my roommate. He played Meredith. She's my current roommate. She played. I had a few people that I grew up with since 6th grade who they played, and yeah, basically I lucked into the cast.
So, did you have any help running that season, or was everything done just by you?
Oh my god, dude! I basically with caveats, but to a large extent, I ran the first 5 seasons of my game.
Mm-hmm.
The season 6 was the first season where I really had like an immense amount of help. Season 4, I also had a lot of help because a bunch of the season 3 people came back.
Mm-hmm.
But season 1 was 100% me, like literally nothing else. Season 2 was like 90% me, and then James was like my right hand man, kind of helping out and taking photos and stuff. And then season 3 was similar. Season 4, I had season 3 people coming out. And then season 5, I didn't have anyone because it was my freaking all-star season, and all the people who were helping on crew were playing. But yeah, does that answer your question? I don't remember what the
Yes.
question was.
Quick shout out from Valencia, Casey. She wants to know that she was hooked on your season last year.
Oh my gosh, Valencia, I remember you because I watched all of Steven's podcasts and you were following along the whole time. I remember you. You should apply sometime if you play these games. I don't know if you play, but yeah, I remember you. And stay tuned because this season 6, is going to be. I don't like to use the word better, but season 6 is going to be a lot of fun.
I don't know. I mean, season 6 is great cast, but it's really missing some people. There's no Hannah. There's no Adam. There's no Jordan. I don't know. It's gonna be hard to beat. Oh no, KC. I think Casey just.
Am I here? Am I
okay.
here?
Are you back?
Okay, I'm back.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm back.
great.
I'm back.
So That's a lot of work. You were describing that, to do all of it yourself and do it multiple seasons. Were there any things you learned along the way that try to like make it easier along the road?
Well, first of all, to answer that question, the main thing I would say is make challenges with the assumption that you'll want to do it again. Because if you have a successful season in any capacity, whatever that means for you, you're probably going to want to do it again. Um, and just having challenges from the previous season is so helpful. The first two seasons, I didn't make any challenges to be reused, wasted so much money, so much resources, and everything. And season three is when I started building challenges that I could reuse. And I've been doing that more often. So I
Mm-hmm.
would definitely say build challenges that will last. But also look at yourself and understand your own like eccentricities and
Mm-hmm.
your like where you can put energy. For me, like I said at the time, I was like in a relatively unhealthy obsessive mindset just about Survivor in general and
Mm-hmm.
why I just had all of this energy, and the only outlet for it was CBS Survivor at the time. And so whenever I started Surviving Bloomington, that energy was able to go over here. So for me, it wasn't a big deal. I wanted to do everything. It was like if I wasn't doing everything, then that energy was now going back to CBS Survivor. And I didn't want it over there on CBS Survivor. So for the first few years, it really was like people would offer me help and I'd be like, thank you, please come out and help volunteer. Like the actual weekend is where I really need the help. But
Mm-hmm.
the time leading up to it,
Yeah.
I love that. That just gives me
Mm-hmm.
something to do. So, but I also recognize, I listened to Survivor New York and they were really adamant about if someone offers you help, accept it. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. But there's also that part of like understand your own eccentricities and like it's allowed to be your baby if you want it to be your baby and you have that energy to make it your baby. But like if you know that you don't have the energy to do it all yourself, please accept help. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do it all yourself if you don't need
So looking back at that first season, what do you feel were like resounding successes, and what were areas like I think I want to do better next year?
to. um That's a good question. I'd say, I mean, successes were just the fact that the game ended and like crazy things happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not only crazy like crazy things did happen in terms of the game, but like whenever I'm watching Survivor or hosting Survivor, or editing Survivor, or even playing Survivor, I'm looking for like the story of what's happening. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily care about. I mean, I do. It's fun. The strategy stuff is a lot of fun to think about. The chess game is fun to think about, but it's funny to see like what narratives the chess game creates over
Mm-hmm.
time. And every season that I've had has a unique narrative to it, and that's what's so fun. And the first season, the unique narrative that ended up happening was basically all about the winner. At least that's what I got out of it. It was a group of friends who were playing together, and we have this person who at the time, I mean, they felt like an outsider to a certain extent, like kind of unbeknownst to the group as a whole. But like since then, they've expressed that and they've written. It's on the website there after. So our first winner was her name is Cassandra, and she's a very long time friend of mine, and she ended up winning, and it kind of helped her realize, like, we all have these fears within us. I have them so heavily within me of just do do my friends actually like me? Like, do these people that I'm around actually like? We convince ourselves sometimes that like
Mm-hmm.
people just tolerate us, but they don't actually like us. And kind of not that Survivor like is that heavily of like a
All right, let's wait. Let's give it a second for Casey to come back.
kind of she described to me afterwards was that it kind of helped her realize she had this fear of like people just tolerated her. They didn't actually like
Mm-hmm.
her. They just kind of um, hung out with her whenever she needed, whenever like she was around, blah blah blah. And then whenever she won that, she realized like, okay, I like there's like some solid concrete evidence here of like these people do like me, and I can flourish if I let myself
Mm-hmm.
flourish. And a big thing that she wrote about was that she said like when she started the game, she wouldn't let herself like invest herself into it. She like because for fear of losing, she didn't want to try and then lose. Do you know how people kind of
Mm-hmm.
that self-fulfilling prophecy? And then at one point in the game, she said, "Okay, I'm gonna try." and then she kicked it in, and then from that point on she was just a wrecking ball the entire way through, and it kind of let her realize in her real life, like, okay, if I make that decision, like, all right, I'm going to actually put myself out there, I will succeed. And so just kind of like talking to her about like how this game can help us notice things about our real life, that's what kind of encouraged me of like, okay, like the strategy's fun, I love Survivor, all of that, but like if people can actually get something real
Mhm.
out of it, that is what makes me want to host another season.
Mhm. So that was an area you said was a huge success. Was there anything you look back and say, maybe these were rookie mistakes I made, or things like I really saw and I was like, I want to do better year two?
Challenges, just making them reusable to
Mhm.
a large extent, and I'm still in a weird relationship with my challenges that I guess I'll talk about. So I don't even know the complete correct answer to challenges. Like, on one hand, I think you should make them elaborate, and then on another hand, I think that challenges don't matter at all. And then, but the one consistent thing I can say is if you make a challenge, try to make a challenge that lasts at least 5 years. If you can do that, then you'll have options 5 years from now. Think of the future. I guess that is what I would have said about season one. Recognize that you're going to do more than one season.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any favorite challenges in that first season you've never reused?
Oh God. Oh yeah. I mean the very first in season 5, the final four challenge was the very first challenge in Surviving Bloomington that was ever run. So and that challenge ran the first 5 seasons of
Mm-hmm.
Surviving Bloomington. So just that puzzle. It was the first puzzle I
Mm-hmm.
ever made for Survive. It was a puzzle, and it was the first puzzle I ever made. And it was kind of one of the more intricate puzzles of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was the group's first introduction into like what they might be doing for the weekend, and
Mm-hmm.
then it was their also the final four challenge, so it was their last memory, and it was kind of like a little bit of a nicer puzzle. So I liked that one.
So this is the Surviving Bloomington logo puzzle. And for that puzzle, did you make it yourself? Did you buy it online? Like how did you like I'm curious because you have 4 different versions of that, and so I can't imagine it would be cheap.
No, I especially for the first probably I hand make probably 90% of
Mm-hmm.
my challenges. Don't
Mm-hmm.
quote me on that. I'd have to go through them and see. But the problem is when I've bought challenges online, they've broken or like warped, and like there are that's another piece of advice. Don't use 3D printed thing or okay. Some hosts might say differently, but I don't use 3D printed things because in 2 different seasons now I've tried using a 3D printed plastic puzzle, and they've like warped in the heat because it's hot in Bloomington when we play, and then the puzzle doesn't work. So I don't really like using things that I don't personally make or that
Mm-hmm.
are like I guess not professionally made, but like it has to be wood basically, and I'm comfortable working with wood, so I
Mm-hmm.
make most of my challenges, and I like the idea of making your own challenges. But yeah, it's a lot of work. Stencils, a lot of spray paint, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
wood cutting, all that.
So you finished season one, and how soon do you realize like I want season two?
As soon as I can find a new group of people who will play. And well, so one unique thing about, I mean, all of the hosts can probably say this, at least hosts who have been doing it for a while, that it's hard to cast your first few seasons just because, especially before
Mm-hmm.
the like, before I knew about like the LRG community, it was basically just people in Bloomington that I could find and try to convince to play. So in that regard, I kind of developed the routine of like it's commonplace in Surviving Bloomington for 2 to 4 returning players from the previous season
Mm-hmm.
to re-enter the game. And usually it's 2 to 4 people who were voted out pre-merge of the previous season. Because like when I think of returning players, unless it's like an all-stars, I try to think like, okay, whose story isn't finished?
Mm-hmm.
Like someone got voted out before they were finished
Mm-hmm.
playing. Let's bring that person back for the next season and give them an opportunity. And that way it's less of a target. It's not like they're this huge like crazy big player coming into the next season. They can kind of say like, I was voted out second. Like I'd love a chance to play this time, and usually people give them a chance
Mm-hmm.
to play the next time. Things like that. I forgot what the question was.
No, you answered it. So That first season, the game was 2 days long. Your current seasons Surviving Bloomington are 4 days long. At what point did you lengthen it, and what led that decision?
Uh, Season 3, I think, was 3 days. Season
Mhm.
4 was 4 days. No, season 4 was 3 days. Season 5 was my first 4 day season, I think. I don't remember. Basically, I've been like gradually getting longer
Mhm.
over time, and it's probably going to get even longer for season 7. So,
So is it you're making it longer because why make it longer? What do you think
uh,
adds to the game by making it longer?
because I have a terrible sense of time and I forget, like I lose things and I just need more time to
Mhm.
run challenges. Basically I'll get a cast and then I'll design the game and then I'll look at the challenges and try to realistically see how long each of them are. And me personally, I like to give contestants like as much time as possible at camp before a vote. So I try to structure my challenges and time around giving the contestants like a certain amount of time depending
Mhm.
on the quote unquote importance of the round. So for example, if people in my game are ever introduced to new people, they're going to get at least
Oh
three
yeah.
to 4 hours with those new people, if not an entire night. So it kind of just depends on the structure. So first I see how many people, then I see what the challenges are, and then I decide the structure of the game and go that way. And ever since playing Reelfoot, that is what Reelfoot is what really introduced me to the idea of like, okay, longer games are probably what my brain is looking for in terms of
Mhm.
hosting. Not necessarily that they're the best way, but just like what works with my brain as a host.
So seasons 1 and 2 were held, I assume, public property, some certain land, and then season 3 onward, you moved to private property. Is that for game location wise?
Yeah, yeah, basically, like for all intents and purposes.
How did that change things, moving from a public space to a private space?
From public space to private space. Well, I will say year 3 was our first like private space area, and year 3 was a big year. I mean, I don't for people who watched the All Stars. I mean, that was our first season with like Devontae and Adam and Megan Wolf and like all of these like pretty big name
Mhm.
players in Surviving Bloomington. Boogie played. That was Boogie's first season. Um, so but like that location was far and away the most difficult location we have ever been in, and it was just this like the camps were down in like this valley, and then tribal council was on one side of the valley, and then all the challenges were on the other side of the valley. So like we were all just constantly trekking this huge valley back and forth for like 3 days, and so just like having the private property was what we had to do that whenever we switched over into a nonprofit, because
Mhm.
at that point like we can't play like in like the state owned wildernesses or anything, because before that we were basically just, yeah, Adam. Adam had to be there the whole time, so he remembers that contestants did. Um but uh so what was I saying? I lost my train of thought.
So
Or
that's
what's the next
that.
question?
I want to actually dig in a little bit more. You said so when you became a nonprofit, you had to go be on private property. You couldn't be on public property anymore.
Yeah, season 3, we didn't do it out of necessity, but season 4 we did do it out of necessity. Because like the first year, I mean, we were just camping. It was just a group of
Mhm.
friends who were camping together, playing basically a game of Mafia. So we
Mhm.
were just like we were camping. Uh,
Casey's internet is not enjoying this podcast. Let's give it another second. Hey Casey, you're back.
am I back? All right.
Yes.
I know my internet sucks. I'm sorry. What was the last thing you heard?
Um, can you start back at the beginning of the question?
Yep. Okay. So season 4 was out of necessity. Season 3 wasn't out of
Mhm.
necessity. One of the contestants who was playing in season 3 just said like, "Hey, do you want to play on my land? We can play on my land." Blah blah blah. But season 4 was we we actually had it. I had it planned to play in like a park, like not a
Mhm.
park, but like a national park type
Hmm.
place, or we were going to play out there. And then I like posted about it online, and they heard about it, and they called me, and they were like, yeah, you can't do this. If you come out there, we're calling the cops. And
Wow.
well, it's because like we at that point we were, I just didn't know. I mean, it was complete,
Hmm.
I didn't know. But we were like a non-profit, and like technically we were like doing monetary things, and like they couldn't have us on their land. And they actually called me the day before the season started, day before season 4 started. We were literally driving out there with stuff to like take to like our campsite when they called me. And then I called the rest of the group, and I was like, all right, we all need to stop and talk about this because something big just happened. And luckily Megan Wolf came in clutch, and her family had some property that we could play on. And it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise, because the property that we ended up playing on for season 4 was really, really cool. And I'm thinking about going back there for season 7. The only reason we might not is because it's a little bit farther away from our
Hmm.
current location.
So one of the things I'm kind of learning from these interviews is that park rangers do pay attention and will stop survivor games. I think Kirk had the story where park rangers crashed their game and said, like, are there human sacrifices going on here? Park rangers are saying like, hey, you're a non-profit, can't do stuff here. I mean, so this is interesting to learn. So you were able, so talk to me about the decision to become a nonprofit. What led that decision? And because about, I would say there's a good handful of games that are nonprofits where the proceeds go to fundraisers, and other ones are more just for fun, and maybe like there is a small monetary prize for players, but it's mostly kind of revenue neutral.
Right. So for me in 20, crap, I don't remember if it was 2018 or 2019. But I went to, at the time I was in school at a place called Ivy Tech, and
Hmm.
I think they're only in Indiana. But I got accepted into like a relative, basically the equivalent of like a study abroad type thing, where I
Hmm.
went over to France, and we did work with refugees over in France. Um, and that was kind of the catalyst for me being like, well, maybe we could like raise some money and donate it. Because I also did so Surviving Bloomington donates to a local organization called Beacon. It's also known as Shalom Community Center here, and it supports people here in Bloomington who are experiencing homelessness. So at the time, because of my work at Ivy Tech, I was also volunteering at Shalom, and basically I was just around that. I was just in that environment of like
Hmm.
charities in general, and people with that mindset. And I knew I was hosting a second season, and I was like, let's donate a little bit of money. Like, let's do something with this. And literally, what I told the cast of season 2 was like, just raise $20. Like literally everyone raised $20. We'll donate $320, and it's something kind of
Hmm.
cool from the weekend. Like that was literally the only expectation. And then they ended up raising like $1,500, and I was like, oh, okay. And that was without me pressing them at
Hmm.
all. Like they were just kind of, a few of them just kind of ran with it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, like let's just do that. A lot of Surviving Bloomington is literally just me realizing, stumbling ass backwards into realizing that something works, and then being like, all right, let's go with that. So that's kind of what happened there. And then season 3, they over doubled season 2, and then season 4 over doubled season 3. So like the fact that it just kept growing just made it
Hmm.
easier and easier to realize like, okay, this is. And then when you add the end game incentives, like that just makes it even more and more. Um, and not that every game has to go like the charity route, but
Hmm.
I find that it adds to the story. And like I said, the reason Survivor is so cool to me are these various stories, and people having that connection is one of those stories.
So it's curious because your first 4 seasons, you're really tapping into the Survivor fandom in Bloomington itself. How deep is the fandom? Did you find like there was a more struggle later on to find Survivor players, or like people you out of the woodwork would come and say, yeah, I like this, I want to play.
Um, it's not. My understanding was that it was not very deep. I basically created fans out of the first 2 seasons, which I am proud to say.
Mhm.
I'm very glad that I've created all of those fans. But it wasn't until season 3 that I really started branching out beyond my But I stayed in Bloomington. I didn't like post online. So I like at Ivy Tech and at IU Bloomington, there's two colleges here.
Hmm.
I would post boards up, and that's how I found Adam and Devonte. I don't remember how Devonte contacted me. He like was a late person. He wasn't supposed to be on season 3 at all. He stole someone's spot. He was a late applicant, and he got someone's spot. But I remember Adam saw the flyer in Ivy Tech, and so that's how like he found out about it. So there were a handful of people who found out about it, and then it just kind of grows through word of mouth at that
Hmm.
point. And so yeah, you'd have to give me the name of the player you're wondering about, and I'll tell you if they were a fan first or or they were introduced. There were a lot of weird connections for people playing the first 4 seasons.
So talk to me about your discovery of the live reality game community. Like, how did that come about for you?
So actually, I played, like I said, I played 3 live games. The first game I ever played was Survivor PCT,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a game that's not involved in the LRG community at all. Like when I played that, I didn't know about the LRG community. The guy who ran that one didn't. He's only done 1 season. I think he should do another one because that was a really fun and really
Mm-hmm.
great game and a really difficult game. Um, but so that was the first game that I played, and it was kind of like, and I did pretty well in it, and I had so much fun with it. I was like, I want to like, are there other people doing these?
Yeah.
Like, I want to play another game.
So back up a little bit. How did you even discover about it? How did you discover Survivor PCT?
So this is fun. Like the guy who ran Survivor PCT went to IU Bloomington, which is the main college in the city
Mm-hmm.
where I live. So he found me, and he wanted to play in season 4 of Surviving Bloomington. And I think we did, it was like some sort of trade where like I would play in his game and he would get to play in my game or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
he was moving out to California at the time. And I was like, I don't know if I can go all the way up to California to play a game. And he was like, well, but you have to, because he was trying to convince people to play his game too, because his first cast.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, we struck a quote unquote deal of like, I'll let you play in my game if you play in, or you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was he never even ended up playing in my game for various reasons, just because like the timing never worked out. There wasn't any problems or anything. But so he found me, and then he put on this crazy awesome game out in California that I lucked into playing basically, and I never even had to repay him, which I will repay you. Hey, John, if you're ever listening, like you got a spot in the Survivor season if you ever want it. Like it's just a matter of time. But so yeah, I think that answers your question.
So you played Survivor PCT. How many days was that game?
It was 4 days, and it was like actually on the Pacific Crest Trail, and like we had to like travel such a long freaking distance. Like out of all 3 games that I played, that PCT game was just so physically difficult. Like it was so hard, and maybe it was because I was a newbie and it was my first game, so I'm like
Mm-hmm.
equating it a little bit differently. But in my brain, that game was really really difficult, and a large part of it was because we had to actually hike out to our like play area with all of our stuff, and it was a mile. It was like, this is not me being like an old man. I'm saying he gave us a map, and it was literally a mile walk to and from tribal council every single time. That is not an
You
exaggeration.
really didn't want to lose then.
Exactly. So yeah, but I had so much fun playing that, and then whenever I got home, I took like a year off or whatever, and then I was like, oh, what are these other games? And I remember like looking on my phone, and somehow I found the casting page of live reality games, and literally the first game that I saw, I just applied.
All right. We're gonna wait a second here.
It was the first game that I saw and applied for, and I got on.
And that was Real Foot. So you have this, you play PCT, you play Real Foot, as a game creator and showrunner, like, what are you learning or taking away from these experiences that you're like, I want to bring this into my game?
So actually playing Real Foot, going into Reelfoot, I think I had a lot of established um, ideas of how to host a season, and Reelfoot actually made me question a lot of my ideas, and I
Hmm.
still haven't like fully landed.
Hmm.
And I don't know if I ever even want to fully land somewhere, because one of the great things about these games and this series, these other getting to
Hmm.
meet and listen to these other hosts, is recognizing like, okay, this is a living organism that we're creating right now. Like, it is okay for our opinions as hosts to change over time. So for example, going into PCT, my opinion about challenges was challenges don't matter. Like like you do not have to have an extravagant challenge. Like, the important part of the game is camp life. You need to, the most of your
Hmm.
energy needs to be going into giving the contestants the chance to play the strategy in the social game. You can have the most simple challenge. It doesn't have to be an extravagant challenge. That was my mindset before Reelfoot. But then I played Reelfoot, and they had some pretty extravagant challenges, and I gotta admit, it was pretty fun. um, uh, and so, my challenges aren't awful, but there are some games out there, especially now, they're getting bigger and bigger with these challenges. And I'm finding that I am having to adjust my mindset in terms of challenges, and trying to create a more immersive experience for my contestants during challenges than I have maybe in the past. So that's kind of what my introduction into the live reality game has shown me,
Hmm.
is like, it does create more immersion if you have big challenges.
Hmm. You also talk about just questioning like your what you do as a host, or like are you talking about like kind of a hosting style, like I'm curious what you meant by that, or was it just more like camp focus versus challenge focus, where you want to put your time and energy.
Oh yeah. So where you put your time, basically, because we have a finite amount of time. We have 4 days. Do I want
Give it a sec. Maybe two. All right, you're back.
this is probably gonna keep happening, so just get
Okay.
used to
So you
it.
said you have a finite amount of time in these games.
So you have a finite amount of these time in these games. You got 4 days, and so I have to decide, like, do I want to create an epic challenge experience that lasts 5 hours, that the
Mm-hmm.
contestants, yeah, they're going to remember that, but hey, now they don't get that time back at camp.
Mm-hmm.
So like, a lot of times you have to decide which is more important, and for the first at least 4 seasons of my game, I emphasized more camp life than
Mm-hmm.
challenges. Like, when I'm designing a challenge, I'm thinking, if this lasts more than 15 minutes, then it's gone too long. Like, we need to just get them in there, figure out who won, and then go out. It doesn't really matter what they did. That was that was, and to a certain extent still is,
Mm-hmm.
my ideology behind challenges. I would much rather get you back to camp, so whoever's on the bottom has plenty of time to scramble, as opposed to doing an hour-long challenge and then they have 10 minutes to scramble at camp.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a right answer. It also depends on the round. It's hyper specific. But what I can say is, in the beginning, I was more camp life. Now I'm starting to play with the idea of more epic challenges, like some of these other games do.
Has your experience being a player in these games impacted how you host or what you do in seasons as well?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked this. I am extremely passionate about this point. I do not believe that hosts should ever make their contestants do something that they would not do themselves. So, I will never make you do a challenge that I do or would not be willing to do myself. I'll never make you sit through a thunderstorm in the rain that I would not be willing to do myself, that I would not be willing to sit through myself. I have as a contest, as a host, like, I really do think that's important, because like, there's a massive amount of empathy that goes into these games, and if you're a host without empathy, I will say I have not met any host, like, if like, that is just so important. You really need to not put something into your game that you're not yourself. um and then, yeah, that's how I'll answer that.
Okay. Yeah, because I know like no, that's interesting. So you have your first 4 seasons. Why is season 5 an all-star season? What led you to say, season 5, let's make this big? Uh, can you hear me now?
All right, where are we at?
So you run your first 4 seasons, and season 5, you're like, we're gonna do an all-star season. We're gonna bring all returning players back, and the fill out the cast. You have some veterans from other games come join in too. What led to season 5 is an all-star season time.
Season 5 was always going to be an All Stars. That was my. Are we still here? Am I on?
I'm
Okay,
here,
yeah.
and you're here.
See, season 5 was always going to be an All Stars. Ever since whenever I cast season 2, that's when I decided that season 5 was going to be an All Stars. And I told all of them about it. Like throughout the years, I was like, "You might make it into the All Stars. Season 5 is going to be the All Stars, so get ready." I did, to a large extent, plan for season 5 to be my last season. I did not plan on going past season 5, and the only reason I am going past season 5 is because I discovered the LRG world, and I do think that Surviving Bloomington has a place in that world. So that's why I'm continuing. But season 5 was always going to be an All Stars. Every time I did a season, I was always looking at like, all right, who's coming back at season 5, and yeah.
So one of the big decisions you make for season 5 is you film it for the first time. Your first 4 seasons, I think there's maybe photos or some video footage, but not formal episodes. And taking the time to film and edit and post episodes, that's a large commitment. Talk me through the decision for that.
Okay, so another thing about me is, so like I said, I stumble ass backwards into things a lot. The filming of season 5 and the editing of season 5 kind of was another thing like that. I was thinking about this the other day, kind of in preparation for this, and I was like, I don't even remember planning to film season 5. Like, I don't think that was in my plans. Seth, who you played with in season 6, no spoilers, but there's a guy named Seth who came out. He is dating one of the contestants from season 5. And so he was there. He had his phone. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was just like, "Casey, I'll film this for you." And then once he started filming, we got this other guy to start filming, and we just kind of filmed it. And when we had the film, I just started looking through it and just kind of decided to start editing it. I don't have any editing experience or anything like that. I had never done anything like that. It all just kind of was put in front of me, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. That's one world that could have happened. The other world that could have happened, and I don't remember which one happened, was I said I'd like to film this, but I don't know if I'll make episodes out of it. And then we filmed it, and then there just happened to be enough film for me to make episodes out of it. And then I fell in love with the editing process and just made it like what it was. But it was absolutely not like intricately planned in the slightest bit.
So talk to me, like, what have you learned about editing? What advice would you give for people who are thinking of I think I want to film and edit a season myself?
Editing, okay, so this is another one of those things where you kind of have to, if you're trying to decide if you want to edit versus maybe doing like a live stream, you kind of have to look at either your own eccentricities or the eccentricities of someone else in your life who is willing to do the editing. Whoever's hands are doing the editing, you need to look at that person's eccentricities, and especially their eccentricities in regards to Survivor, and understand if they have the bandwidth to actually go through all of this footage and find the story and find the sound bites and find the clips and find the music that goes with it and like put it all together. And that's really hard. It is so freaking hard to do that. It takes forever. I mean, like, all of my time goes into editing. Luckily for me, I love it. I have so much fun. I would way rather be editing than watching Netflix or playing video games. So like when other people are doing those things, I'm on my computer editing Survivor games just because it's fun for me. So I am extremely lucky in that regard. But if you don't necessarily have those, then you just have to be realistic about like, okay, how deep into the editing do I want to go? Do I just want footage for the contestants to be able to watch, which in a lot of ways is so much fun for them? Or do I want to create a narrative where you're like weaving things in and out of each other? And it's hard to really give advice on that unless it's like a case by case basis, because people might overestimate their capabilities, and once they get 2 or 3 episodes in, they're like, holy shit, I do not want to do this anymore.
So 2 questions. If you had to ballpark a number for the hours it takes to get an episode out, what would that be?
So the figure for season 5 that I used for people when they would ask me that question is roughly every 1 minute that you see on that you watch as a viewer takes an hour of my life.
Are you saying it takes 60 hours to get an episode out?
Correct.
Okay. That's a lot. Now, this is a stupid question. Does it get easier to edit as the season progresses and more people are voted out, so there's less players to have to deal with?
The smaller the group that you're trying to tell the story of is, the easier it is to edit. So, for example, Merge is the hardest because season 5 Merge was 12 people, and so I had to weave a story of 12 people together. Whereas episode 1 of season 5, I only had to weave the story of 6 people because they were 6-person teams. So like it's fine for me to weave together 3 different versions of 6 people. It's way harder to weave together 12 different people who are trying to intersect with each other. So like it gets easier in like the last third of a season. I mean, I've only done it once, so you'd actually have to ask that to people who have done it other times. But what I'm noticing as I'm editing season 6 is a similar trend of like once the group is smaller, it's easier, and when it's larger, it's much more difficult.
There's less storylines that you need that you have to deal with, I guess, in a sense, right? Because it's more like streamlined.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of storylines, do you go in the season with storylines in mind, or are you like looking to discover storylines as you edit?
I discover them as I edit them, and that's my favorite part. And that's what's so cool about like editing too, because at least these 2 seasons, season 5 and season 6, is I didn't do much of the filming, and in like especially in season 6, I spent like almost no time at the camp, so I know what happened. Like I know the results of what happened, but I truly don't know how you all got there. So as I'm editing these episodes, I'm seeing how you all got to these like end results, and it's so fun and so cool. And that's how it was for season 5 too. So no, I do not shoot for stories at all. I look for the story that the contestants are telling, and then I try to figure out how to tell that story in a way that the audience can hopefully understand.
Because what's interesting about Survivor is that the narrative, in a sense, writes itself because you have one winner, right? And take season 5, the winner is Jordan, right? So there's a lot of the story will be about Jordan, how Jordan got there, how Jordan won, and then you're like, well, we have the final 2 and 3. Why didn't they win? Let's make sure their stories told us when. And then you're like, okay, now we can kind of feel like we can always like reverse engineer the stories in a sense based off placements and what happens.
Well, it's so actually what's really interesting that I'm finding, at least in terms of my editing style, is I really don't try to tell. There are stories that I choose not to tell. That's for sure. There are definitely stories that I choose not to tell, and usually those stories are like something that might be like in.
We'll give it a second. Maybe another second. All right, you're back.
All right.
You choose stories not to tell.
Yeah, I choose stories not to tell. Like, and for like an example of that might be like if someone does something embarrassing. Like when I'm editing, my goal is never to like embarrass someone or make someone look like a fool. So like I'll choose to not tell certain stories. But for a large part, I love the idea of looking at these more from a like earlier seasons of CBS Survivor, where I think the earlier seasons of CBS Survivor were more like a documentary, whereas the later seasons nowadays are more like a game show. And I love the idea of Survivor being like a documentary where we're seeing how these people interact with each other. So you're getting to a certain, like to as best of a amount that you can, the same amount of screen time of everyone. If someone isn't if I don't have footage of the screen time, like if someone's getting under edited, the only reason is because I don't have footage of that person. Like I actively try to
there's no hidden Hannah confessionals from last season that weren't aired that we're all begging for still.
No, Hannah. The rule of thumb for season 5 was always Hannah gets the last word. Hannah was all. If you go back and watch season 5, Hannah, any scene that Hannah's in, she's always the last one to talk because Hannah's always perfectly wrapping everything up and like knowing it. Hannah never got footage cut. So the people that who are like the quote unquote main characters are just the people who talked more,
Mhm.
and I had more to show. But but I mean that's what the documentary is. That's what we're showing. You're showing what act by showing everything and not choosing a specific story, you are then showing what actually happened out there, and the contestants can relate more and remember more about what happened. And you can't show everything, and there's caveats to that and everything, but my goal is to make it more documentary based as opposed to telling a specific story with a goal of mine in mind.
So I have to ask. So before Surviving begins, you turn the cat and say, "Make your confessionals count. Don't give me like dead air." Do you feel like season 6 is delivering on what you asked them to?
Oh my god! No, I'm so glad you asked that. It's so funny. So this is a learning moment. This is a learning moment for all of you hosts out there. Do not talk. Okay, so season 5, my contestants would give like 10, 15, 20-minute confessionals. And that is the most boring shit in the world to listen to. 20 minutes of them saying oohs, and ahs, and like not saying anything interesting. So before season 6, I pulled the cast aside and I was like, "Hey, streamline your confessionals. If you're not saying something interesting, get out of there." Unfortunately, I think season 6 went the opposite end of the spectrum. Hi, Danny. I think season 6 went the opposite end of the spectrum to where some people were only giving like 20-second confessionals, and I'm just like, "Oh no, there's no footage of you. You tried too hard to streamline this shit." So I'm definitely making adjustments. That's actually some good advice. We were also scared of being boring. Nina, you were not boring. I promise you that.
Well, okay,
um,
that's interesting. Cause curious because you're like, like make it count. It's like, okay, I need to be good and useful with my time as a confessionalist and not make Casey regret me later on. You galvanized the
well,
cast. I'll say that much at least.
I did. I know, and that's a learning experience. Don't say that to don't tell your contestants to be brief because I am now dealing with the repercussions of that in the editing room of
Don't,
like
Casey, don't worry. We made up for it at Final Tribal.
yeah, I think you all made up for it at a couple tribals. um, but yeah, so um, like probably like 5 minute. Basically, if you are a whoever's doing the editing, whoever your main editor person, they need to be there doing the first few, like the first day of confessionals. Like whoever's editing should train the contestants on confessionals.
Mhm.
What I should have done is I should not have done that proclamation. I should have gone around and done all of the first confessionals and
Mhm.
trained you all individually. That's what I should have did. I didn't do that, but that's what
That
I'm going to
actually would
do
be really
moving
helpful.
forward.
Kind of like, this is what I'm looking for. Like, I like what you said. This, don't bother with this because that's just fluff. I'm not going to include later on. That would actually be really helpful. I mean, I know. So when I played Victory House the Mole, looking back at the seasons and the confessionals they used and brought, they really used the players as the narrators because they don't have as much videographers, so they're not capturing any of the downtime that season. So they're really capturing the challenges, the executions, and some confessionals, but they didn't really have a lot of the time, the downtime, the interaction with the players. And so they really relied on the players to narrate and give a lot of life to it. And I don't think I realized that when I was in the game how important that was. And so looking back at that season, Sabrina gets a lot of confessionals because she like narrates the heck out of the things because they don't have they can't show that. And so that was like a really eye-opening thing, like playing and then watching it back, like, oh, that's what they wanted, right? And so I think it would be helpful as a player if like the host says, hey, like, I like what you're saying, but I want more of this. I can use less of this.
Yeah, and then that's why you see like when you watch like season 5 of Surviving Bloomington, you see Hannah, she's getting all this screen time because she's gold on camera. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether or not she's involved in the strategy doesn't matter. The fact that she A knows what's going on and B can tell the audience
Mm-hmm.
what's going on, that's what creates a good confessional, and that's how you get on the screen, as opposed to the person who's sitting in the back just kind of being like, yeah, I think I might go with this group, but I don't know. And that's their confessional. And I'm just like, well, I can't use that. Like
I
you
look
just
forward to
like
my wishy-washy confessionals. I can't wait.
So yeah, if you do plan on making episodes, try to get them to say something, and then also recognize that it's not necessarily like people suck at giving confessionals. Sometimes they're just not in the mood, and you have to hype them up. Like that is a big thing. Whenever I am doing confessionals with
Mhm.
people, I'm pulling them aside and saying, "All right, shake it out, get it out of you, because you're being fucking boring right now. You got to get this going because the audience is trying to connect with you." So that is another, like, if you find that someone isn't giving the most interesting confessionals, maybe take a second, turn the camera off, hype them up, and then start filming when they're hyped.
Mhm. I think you're gonna laugh. I think one of my favorite like moments of the finale of season 5 is Megan Sparky has just won Final Immunity, and she just looks dead. It's the scene of her like before the confessional. She's just so over everything right now, and she's like I was like, I don't know, something that just lives rent free in my mind.
I know exactly what you're talking about. No, well, see, that's a story. That sometimes it is actually fun. Like I will use like off-screen footage like that to tell the story of like that. In that case, it's useful on the very last day, the very last run. Like it's almost over. It's like, okay, now the exhausted confessional makes sense. But when you're on day one giving an exhausted confessional, that doesn't make sense.
um, Season 5 to season 6 is a big change, right? The season 5 is your
Yeah.
all-star season, right? All the time before then, you generally draw on locals to come play your game. I think season 5, you have a little exception with you have like Connor, Stacey, and Hannah come and play from out of town. Season 6, the cast kind of breaks down half locals, half people from out of state. Talk about the decision to like expand casting and go beyond, the Bloomington, Indianapolis region.
I mean, that is a direct result of just being involved in the live reality community and
Mm-hmm.
having played in Surviving Reelfoot. I mean, it just as direct as it gets,
Mm-hmm.
because Surviving Reelfoot, A, introduced me to the live reality games, and B, introduced me to the podcasts. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge Rob Has a Podcast fan. I listen to it. It is not an exaggeration to say that I listen to Rob Has a Podcast every single day. So when I realized that there were podcasts about these like the LRG
Mm-hmm.
games, I was like, okay, here we go. And then Steven, you you were interviewing all of my Reelfoot contestants, and I had a difficult time emotionally in terms of Reelfoot, for nothing to do with like the game production itself. Amazing game. Please apply for Reelfoot. But like personally, I had some difficulties inside of my Reelfoot experience, and like the podcast specifically, you doing the interviews with all of my castmates is what really helped me recover. And then I was able to do an interview with you, and that also really helped me recover. And then I remember specifically, Steven, I don't remember if it was during that interview or maybe over text or something, but I had said I was thinking about filming season 5. This was before 5. And you told me, you said, yeah, it's a really like a lot of seasons have like found a jump in success, or like more jump in applicants, if they have a season that they can watch afterwards. And that resonated with me big time.
Well, that's awesome.
So like that, directly 100%, I attribute that to you 1,000,000%. You said that, and I was like, that was when I was like, okay, if I can get a season out there and people can see what we're doing here, then we'll get people to apply. And then, hey, it happened. We put out the applications. I had my crew back now that they weren't playing in an all-star season. So like I had people helping me with casting. Dallas and Sparky, or Megan, helped me with casting from season 5. They helped me cast. And
all right, give it a second. Maybe another sec. Casey will join us back momentarily.
I'm getting so excited. I'm getting so excited. I keep breaking the internet. Okay, so I stumbled ass backwards into Reelfoot, and then Reelfoot made me stumble ass backwards into live reality games. Live reality games made me stumble ass backwards into the podcast, which made me stumble backwards into hosting or to filming, and that made me to people from Texas and New York coming on. Blah blah blah. It was awesome. I loved it so much. So. It's just a huge chain of events, and I'm not stopping it anytime soon.
So you mentioned previously, like my initial goal was I'm going to run 5 seasons, 4 seasons and All-Stars for season number 5. You play Reelfoot, you get involved in live rally game world, you realize like I can cast from a greater pool. You're like, let's keep this going, right? I'm curious to know, where would you like to see Bloomington go? You know, what like you kind of mentioned, you know, I think you said something like Bloomington has its own unique space in the live rally game world. Can you talk me through that?
Oh man, it's hard to actually accurately answer that question because we are in in my opinion, I believe we are in a transformative time in terms of these fan games and the live games that are happening. Um, I truly believe they're only going to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger over the next 10. I think 10 years from now, people are going to know what these live games are in the same capacity that they know like what a Spartan race is, right? So like everyone, we might not all do Spartan races, but we all understand the concept of what a Spartan
Mm-hmm.
race is, and it's not this crazy thing whenever your friend says like, hey, I'm training for a Spartan
Mm-hmm.
race that I'm going to do this summer. I believe these LRG games, these survivor games, Big Brother, these new creation games that people are making like Golden Gates and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, um, I think these games are going to get bigger and bigger to where people who don't play them will still understand generally what they are. And I want Surviving Bloomington to be one of those things. I don't exactly know what's going to happen, but like it is not out of the question for this to essentially turn into like a regional sport where like Surviving Bloomington will be one of like the Midwest games, and then you have the East Coast games, you have the North games, you have the West Coast games, and like you have to make final three and like at least one game from each division to get this rank,
There's
and
a
then
circuit.
and you have to have a certain rank to get onto
Mm-hmm.
CBS Survive, like things like that, or like so like I don't know where Surviving Bloomington is necessarily going to fall in that. I change my mind every day. Like on one hand, I love the idea of Surviving Bloomington being like a beginner game. Like if you've never played one, come here. I will give you the best time of your life. It won't be super hard. It's not like the craziest game out there. But then on the other hand, I want to be like the biggest game out there that people are like they have to work years to get into and things like that. And so like I'm not completely sure, but I do think that's where these games are going to
Mm-hmm.
start going eventually. And one step there is I think us hosts need to really start working together and collaborating together about like, okay, where are we in this world? Like there is a world that's starting to be created, and it
Mm-hmm.
is in our hands as the hosts to create that world. How do we want to do it? Do we want this to be
Mm-hmm.
a competitive world where we're fighting each other for contestants, or do we want this to be a cooperative world as hosts where we're like, okay, like we're each our own division, like, and we're working within our divisions, we're working together, and then like there's like this
Yeah.
tier system of contestants. And I'm also thinking about that from the mindset of a contestant as well, because I also plan on playing for the next 10 years.
Yeah, so this reminds me a little bit of like, bear with me through an analogy with escape rooms, right? You know, there's a question of you do an escape room, is a different escape room a substitute or a complement? You know, and I think it really is a complement. Like, you know, these games will bring players into the fold, and players will want to play other games, right? Just because I do one live game, then I want to do other live games, and so building up and having a constructive community, I think, is really valuable to help players come in, have an experience, and want to do more. Because I think, I generally I feel like, you know, games, like even from your real experience, can be rough for players, right? And I think the rougher the experience is, and especially if you don't have a really die-hard love for Survivor, etc., can be a turnoff, and like people do are one and done, don't play again. And I think we want to see players come back and enjoy and make the most of it.
The big thing that I tell people is like, okay, so you really have to think, or you don't have to, but like I encourage people to think of Survivor like a sport. Like like it truly is becoming a sport that you can train for and you can play every year, like like continuously. And like I get it, when you lose a game, oh man, it sucks so
Mm-hmm.
bad, and it's just like I don't want to do that again. Like until like you don't have to, but like Survivor used to be a once in a lifetime experience. Survivor is no longer a once in a lifetime experience. Survivor is something you can do every year for basically
Mm-hmm.
the rest of your life that you're physically capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, like, there are even options to do it when you aren't physically capable of doing
Mm-hmm.
it. So I lost my train of thought. I don't remember where I was going. How did I
Yeah.
start that sentence?
So I guess, you know, one of the things I was talking about in my conversation with Kirk is the concept of burnout. There's a lot of fun and joy host seasons, but it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. And so Kirk is, really understanding, what you want and like being able to take down to now. For you, it sounds like you have a lot of passion, and that passion really fuels you, really excited to do, and you'll do a lot of the work. And my question is like, is there something you do to help make sure you don't have burnout, or you're just like, that's just not something I've had to deal with as a host?
Um, no, burnout definitely is real, and I think it for me, the recipe that I am finding that works for me is once a year. I do not play more than one game a year. I don't host more than one game a year. I have I've seen people, especially over this past year, just like I've seen people host multiple games in an extremely short amount of time. I've seen people play games in multiple games in an extremely short amount of time. And hey, if you can do that, more power to you. But like, I don't, I find it hard to imagine that I would be able to do that more than 1 year in a row. And so, yeah, pacing yourself is definitely important. And
Mhm.
for me, that comes from more of a contestant side of things, because it's way easier to play multiple games than it is to host
Mhm.
multiple games. And I have had to make the very conscious decision of just one game a year. Like if I do more than that, then for me, I feel like I'm taking away from what happened in like the first game that I had played
Mhm.
that year. So for example, when I played Real Foot, like I had a difficult emotional experience from
Mhm.
that. If I had just glossed over it
Mhm.
and played another game a month later, I think I would probably not like Real Foot. I
Mhm.
probably wouldn't like my castmates from Real Foot on if I had just
Mhm.
played a different game a month later, as opposed to I took a year off. I didn't do anything else. I bonded with my Real Foot cast. I invested in the hosts of Real,
Mhm.
like I feel, and now I love Real Foot. I love my castmates. I like freaking Angela
Mhm.
and Storm. Like
Mhm.
they were two of my biggest
Mhm.
cheerleaders when I was playing Can You Survive? I mean, big time. And if I had just written not written, if I had played another game out directly after Real Foot, I feel like I would have been more likely to write Real Foot off. And I'm glad I did not do that. So I don't remember how we started this
Burnout.
line of thought. Burnout.
Yeah.
Um, as a contestant, give yourself time to digest and recognize again that this is not a once in a lifetime experience. You can do this for the next 15 years. Take some time and understand what happened in your last game, and maybe it'll help you out in your next one.
I want to bring up definitely Melanie's noting like, hey, if you go out early, like you want to play more, right? And I think it also can range based off, how long is this game? Definitely a 1 day game is going to have a very different effect versus a Real Foot 7 or 8 day game for sure. And I know, like me personally, like drive is such an important aspect of playing these games. Is like I know I need to want to win more than anything else. And I did two in one summer, and I felt the second game I was flat, and I think that really hurt me. And so I was like, I think I need to be hungry walking into one of these games as a player. And then for a host, I think from what I've seen, your volunteers are an important resource. Not only you and your mental ability, but like having volunteers and be able to rely on people to run a game successfully. And so it's important not to dry out that resource as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've never done more than one season in terms of hosting, so I don't know about drying up resources and my volunteer experience has been the most heavy with season 7. Um, to respond to what Melanie
Mm-hmm.
said, actually, yeah, that's an extremely good point, and I would be curious to see like if I were voted out like second in a game or
Yeah.
something, if I'd be desperate to play another game. And I guess that really does come down to our own like individual mindsets. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I still think I wouldn't want to. I think if oh man, when I don't do well in one of these, I get so pissed off, and I really need some time to relax, or I'm gonna come in with like a jaded on my shoulder, which actually is what happened to me. My first season, I ended up coming in second place, and in a fashion that at the time I would have disagreed with. I no longer claim this, but at the time I would have claimed bitter jury.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so I did go into Reelfoot with a real chip on my shoulder. I was like, all right, I'm going to win this one. These people are my puppets, blah, blah, blah. And then when all of them ended up being so freaking good at the game, I was like, holy shit, I probably should have taken more time off. But I guess it's a journey. And
Mhm.
ask me that same question 5 years from now, and I'll probably have a
For
different
sure.
answer. 2 years from now, I'll have a different answer.
I need to do a sidebar with you.
Let's do it.
Reelfoot, their All-Star season, right? So many of your original Noga tribe was on there, right? Right. So, what were your thoughts watching so many players for your season go play on this?
Were there a lot of people from my tribe?
Not your tribe, sorry, but the blue tribe, Noga.
Okay.
No one from your tribe, but so many people from the Noga tribe who you had a chance to work with and play in the game was on there. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, Reelfoot aired while
We were
Survive.
playing our
It
season,
was
so
the same.
we
Yeah, it
missed
was
the first
the
couple
same
days of
time.
it.
Yeah, so my knowledge of that season, of the Reelfoot season, pretty much pertains only to what happened to people in my from season 10, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. So uh, I know it's awful to say, but I don't really know a whole lot about the All Stars of
Well,
Reelfoot.
hey,
I
there's
was I
about
was
40
rooting.
hours of podcast you can go listen to about it
I
all
was
your free
I was
time.
I was big time rooting for like Josh and Megan and
Mhm.
Sharif and all of them. And I know Carly was in there too. Carly and I never got to meet inside of the game, so I didn't really have a whole lot of context there. But I
Mhm.
was excited to see a bunch of representation from season 10. I was like, hey, let's get us in there. We actually have a group chat going in season 10, and it's fun for us. We totally still use it. And so it's a lot of fun to. I was following along in like that group chat and
Mhm.
stuff too. But since I was since I was filming Surviving Bloomington and then going directly into editing right after and everything, I didn't have time to watch the live streams or season 11.
Talk to me about your philosophy when it comes to advantages in the game. I know we've seen a lot of seasons pick up in this last year or two, the shot in the dark, for instance, as an advantage. And I think one thing that makes Bloomington interesting is I've really enjoyed, your twist of how you made it work for season 5. And I know you mentioned before, it's the planning and dreaming up of the season that I think is one of the most exciting parts of hosting.
Yeah. So advantages are definitely it's so tricky, especially after basically my thought process is just trial and error.
Mhm.
First off, if you see something on CBS Survivor that doesn't work, don't bother trying to make it work.
Wait, we earn the merge isn't like every game should adopt it?
No, definitely not. Even some things that have worked in CBS Survivor, just recognizing that they lucked out, like the idol nullifier. I will probably never do idol nullifiers. I don't think y- understanding the power. Oh, actually, that's a good way to think about it. Understanding the power of all of the advantages that you have in the game and the hierarchy of those powers, and recognizing which power you want to be the most powerful. And in my opinion, the more you can like level out those powers and give agency to the contestants about what those powers are, the better or I guess the more unique the advantage might be. And for season 5, what we saw was just being able to transfer shot in the darks, and then they stack on top of each other. So, like, if you have 2 shot in the darks, you have a 2 and 6 chance at immunity. 3 is 3 and 6, and so on and so forth. And that kind of creates this idea of like building advantages slowly over time, as opposed to just like stumbling upon a superpower that you accidentally stepped on while you were peeing, right?
Yeah, because I think I like when advantages empower players and gives agency. I like players having agency and having choice. I prefer when there's moments that are feel good versus feel bad. Like, moments, of
Oh yeah,
triumph or opportunities to do things versus the idle nullifier is like kind of like get dunked on, feel bad. You're like, oh man, you had it and then you didn't. So I think it's a lot of like for me. So yeah, so I like agency. I like games trying to create a feel good moment that's empowering versus just like undercutting.
yes, I agree with that. I could not agree with that more. Like I'm thinking about like season 39, Jamal. He found like a beware, but when
That was
beware
that was
wasn't what it
bad.
is today. It was just like, it's like, what? Why? Why are you trying to like make people like? You don't have to like be mean to people. Like you
It was like
can just
Star
make
trying
a
to be
fun
hokey. It's
experience.
like, oh, you should like there could be bad advantages out here. You never know. It's like, oh, come on. It's like this is the only time they ever did it. Now, like even the way beware advantages work, like I'm still not quite sold on beware advantages. I like the risk reward aspect of it. Like are you watching season 45? Are you current? Like
I am.
the three players go to their meetup point and they separate and they're like, okay, are we gonna take this challenge and risk revote? Like I'm okay with that. It's better than the urns. Thank goodness it's better than the Ghost Island urns.
Yes.
That was frustrating to watch.
Well, my problem now with 45 is it's not secret. You have to make it secret. You cannot give someone a public advantage. Like you have to make it at least available for them to make it secret somehow. So I hate that it's public.
I think that's more of an issue of Survivor's modern season letting it be a set schedule, or very least like you could like the fact the issue is there's expectations, right? And I think because you're doing the same thing over and over, players that have expectations. So I don't know. I think Survivor could benefit from being a little bit more creative.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, no, I would push back against that and say
Okay.
Survivor would benefit from being less creative. Less is more, in my opinion, in these games, especially in terms of advantages. You don't need 18 advantages running around the island.
Mm-hmm.
Like letting the contestants play
Mm-hmm.
is something, and like that's why I like the like slowly over time giving the contestants something to do over time so the audience can like follow along that this
Mm-hmm.
person is slowly building together their own superpower that they created over time with 4 different keys, not a
Not that would ever happen.
yeah, no, not oh, I'm gonna open this box and I have a 2 and 3 chance at going home or not
And
randomly.
I guess to modify, I don't mean like creative, like we need to put all these million advantages, like we need to put more 50-50 flip coins. I'm not saying that kind of creativity, but anything like creative with like the game layout and design, so you don't have like every day X, this will happen on every season, so we can expect that kind of creative.
When the contestants can game the game, then, or at least in terms of CBS Survivor, they've gotten to the point where the contestants are gaming the game, and I mean, it's tough. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm on season 45 of Surviving Bloomington. So
I look forward to that day. Casey, are there any last things you want to bring up or talk about that we haven't had a chance to discuss?
I wrote this down. Let me see if this even matters anymore. Oh yeah. Okay. So one thing I do want to kind of reiterate to like people who are thinking about like hosting is you don't have to get bogged down in being exactly like CBS Survivor. So like for me, I don't care if my contestants talk on the way to tribal council or even at tribal council or while the voting's happening. Like to a large extent, Surviving Bloomington is kind of I call it like the wild wild west. Like if you're a contestant, you can get away with it, then you're kind of allowed to do it. Like it takes a lot for you to get in trouble in Surviving Bloomington. Whereas I know some of these other games, I've heard at least that they are very very strict. And I think like in season 5, Hannah and Stacy came in and were taken aback by how loose I was with the rules. And, to a certain extent, I probably should tighten those up and I probably will. But you don't have to be as bogged down in exactly what CBS Survivor is to create the experience that the contestants are looking for. You don't have to crazy starve your contestants for them to still get the full experience. You don't have to make them sit out in the rain, like literally with nothing, for them to still get the full experience. You still have to do a lot of this stuff. And like, there's a happy balance and it changes from year to year and it's an ever growing organism. But like, you don't have to, it doesn't, the reason I wrote this down, I have a little piece of paper I wrote down stuff on. And the reason I wrote that down is because I was listening to Survivor New York, the Survivor New York podcast. And I'm so sorry, I don't remember their names, but one of the people, Naomi, said she was talking about how like season 6 they were like amazingly strict, and like she felt like that took away from the experience when the contestants couldn't even necessarily play to their fullest capacity because they were so strict with like lockdowns and everything. And I just kind of want to back up what she's saying of like it's okay to be loose with these rules, like they are fan
Mhm.
games. You know, you need to tighten them up enough to where everything's fair, but you can also keep it loose to where if someone has the initiative, they can still play with those rules and do something with it without getting disqualified. And when you let the contestants create the rules, that's what Survivor originally was. They create the rules, they create the society.
Mhm.
And so I would encourage hosts to also do that under like, you don't have to have lockdown. If you talk now, you lose your vote. Like it can be, and I'm not saying, I don't even know if that's an actual rule like amongst like these games, but like I hear these things like just kind of the
Mhm.
in the ether of the community, and in my mind I'm like, well, that sounds like a lot of work. Like you can let these people just kind of play and you're still gonna end, like whether or not someone has like an extra sock is not going to affect the outcome of the game whatsoever. Like you don't need to disqualify this
You
person
still
because they brought an extra
we'll
sock
make
into
a
the
sock idol. Well, Casey, as we wrap up, then I have a couple just rapid fire questions to lob your way. Um,
Okay.
so you kind of were getting this, but do you have any last advice for other game creators out there?
Yeah, don't get bogged down. Have fun with it. If you have fun, your contestants will have fun. Put your contestants first, I would say. If someone is truly miserable in a situation, adjust the setting of the game to make them not quit. Like I think it's lame whenever like things are just so awful that like someone has to quit and like no one does anything to like help that person stick around, or like doesn't even cast someone in the first place because they have a an accommodation that's needed or something like that. So like be like willing to bob and weave without necessarily committing to exactly what CBS Survivor is. And then if you do choose to edit a season, edit it for a, if you are the editor, edit it for yourself because this is your art and it's fun. Make something that you are going to have fun looking back on because ultimately you might be the only one who does look back on it. And B, make it for the contestants. Don't make it for an audience. Don't make it to try and get 100,000 views. Make it for yourself that you're going to be proud of. Make it for your contestants that your contestants and their family are going to have fun watching back. And then if people beyond that like watching it, then hey, that's awesome.
What's something you wish you knew before before running your first season of Bloomington?
Oh man, I wish I filmed the first 4 seasons. Not even necessarily made shows out of
Yeah.
it, but I have said I've said it countless times. If I had a magic genie lamp, one of my wishes would be give me footage of the first 4 seasons of Surviving Bloomington. Please let me tell that story because those seasons were incredible.
What is one of your favorite memories from running one of your games?
I talked about it earlier in the podcast, but my first winner, I mean, just the story behind that was so incredible, and it just really showed, at least confirmed for me that Survivor can be larger than this stupid game we watch on television on Wednesdays. Like it can actually mean something true within people and give them something real. And then also, so season 5, there was this person named Boogie who is no longer with us, and so he played in season 5. And in between the time of season 5 filming and season 5 airing, Boogie passed away. And season 5, his family didn't know that he had played in it, and so like his family, once we started airing those episodes, they had this whole new world of Boogie and this whole new like all of this footage of him that they did not think they had no idea they were going to be getting that. And like I've gotten so many messages from people in his family of just like thank you, like just this is something that like
Mhm.
helps keep Boogie alive. And again, that speaks to that notion of Survivor's more than just a game. Like it can be big if we put our heart and souls into these games, and that's why I think they're going to keep growing over the next 10 years. So definitely the first season, and then having season 5 as a if nothing else a memorial for Boogie is pretty incredible.
What would you like to see more from the live rally game community? Are there any trends you'd like to see change or start, for instance?
I want to see versus games. I want to see game versus game. If there are any hosts out there listening, I want to do so badly a Surviving Bloomington versus another game. So like Survivor New York, you're fresh on my mind because I just listened to your podcast. If you want to do a Surviving Bloomington versus Survivor New York, I got 8 players for you. I'll send them out to New York. They'll play. Let's do these games. Let's get Real Foot versus Survival Challenge. Let's get Can You Survive versus Surviving Maine. Let's get Survivor Philadelphia Melanie versus Survivor South Brooklyn or whatever they're like. At this point, I believe these games are growing in a way that like we're not going to have newbies for much longer. Like eventually we're going to get to a point where people have they play games. There's a ton of overlapping relationships. Let's make the games go at each other and that's what I want. I think that would be so fun, and especially if I ever get to play in.
One last pause. Yeah, Casey's internet just can't handle him. He's too much for it. All right.
Yeah, every time I get to.
All right, you're here? No, he's still frozen on my screen. All right, well, I think a game versus game. I think there's been talks in the past of a challenge series that could do something like that. But I think it'd be fun to have a game, or heck, even have a game v game. 6 players from 3 different seasons. Hey, you're back. Okay, there we go.
All right. I don't know where I left off, but I got real excited, and I know it keeps booting me whenever I get excited, so I'm going to chill out.
Well, I think, do you have any last shout-outs to anything else before we get to the teaser?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm going to see if I can find an Ethernet cable real quick.
Okay.
So I can, so it doesn't time out during, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. For those who are on the podcast, this is going to wrap us up here. Thank you again, KC, for your time and talking with me. And, stay tuned for more episodes of Behind the Game in the future, where I'll talk to more game creators. And for those who are sticking around, KC has I think the opening of season 6 to share with us once he gets set up. But yeah, no, thank you so much, KC.
Yeah. Can you hear me right now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm stealing my roommate's Ethernet cable. I have to find it first.
We won't tell your roommate, don't worry.
I keep accidentally unplugging his HDMI cables.
All for the good of Surviving Bloomington.
All right. I can't find it, so we're just going to have to hope for the best. I'm going to sit right next to the router, though.
Okay.
All right. So all right, so to give some context about what we're about to watch, this is season 6 of Surviving Bloomington. And this is basically going to be our teaser. This is the prologue. It's the first 13 minutes of Surviving Bloomington. And something that specifically I am trying to do this season is I am wanting to break format. I know Survivor kind of has its traditional format that it follows, and I followed it a lot for season 5, and a lot of us fan games tend to follow that general Survivor format. I follow it a little bit, but I am breaking it and experimenting with breaking it a little bit. And it's a little, the way I would describe it is it's a little bit more towards like the Black Mirror side of things, to where I will show.
Oh, this will be interesting.
It's not super Black Mirror. That might not be the best way to describe it, but basically, I will show things out of order. Sometimes is one thing that I do. So, did you ever watch
The Genius?
I have not seen The Genius. No.
I would recommend, if you have time capacity, The Genius, because The Genius, at least because for that show, there's a lot of like, they will have a big reveal and then they'll go backstory afterwards, kind of like what led up to this moment for this like, oh my gosh, how this happened.
Okay. Yes. So no, that's perfect. That's like the sort of thing that I'm hoping to do a little bit more, and then eventually I hope to just show an entire episode in reverse, where like you get the vote out first, and then like it just goes backwards.
Memento. Woo!
Yeah. So when you watch this prologue, it is disjointed, but it is purposely disjointed, and there are a lot of times when you're going to be watching season 6 where like I, as the editor, am expecting you to put the pieces together as the viewer. So like it's meant for super fans who know what's going on to a large extent. But yeah,
anyone who's here right now is a super fan and/or was in this season. So I think we're all ready.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, so, and I also don't know if the way my brain works with the same way as everyone else. So you'll just have to try and get into my head when you watch this. All right, so I hit present.
Yes.
And I'm going to use the restroom once this starts playing.
That's allowed. You've seen it before. We haven't.
I've seen it plenty of times.
Real fast, Dr. Jamie asks, what is Survivor?
Survivor is a game where you hang out in a house for like 8 months and everyone watches you.
All right.
Wait. All right. Are we ready?
Let's do it.
All right.
You know when we're ready.
We are rolling.
All right, I'm John V. I'm from New York City. I'm gonna call myself an LRG vet, so I'm definitely gonna win because I see a lot of newbies and a lot of people who watch me play, buddy up with them, cut their throats. I'm being cold-hearted. I really have to take a leak and a shit right now, so I need to find the restroom. And then that's it. I'm just gonna divide and conquer. That's what I'm here for. Brooklyn, we out.
Who'd you get?
I got Dallas. Dallas is one thing that really stood out to me was hope. Hope is such a big thing in life, and I have a lot of hope.
My name is Nina. My goal is to win the game. And I am excited and nervous. Spent all day yesterday overthinking everything. And this morning I just had a lot of like first day of school jitters and energy.
First team to knock all their boxes off with the balls wins reward. Survivors ready?
Yes.
Go!
Go ahead and state your name, kind of like why you chose to be, or why you're glad you got chosen, and are you gonna win?
Yeah. My name is Matt. This is the first LRG that I've ever played, and it's right here in my hometown, which is super exciting. Lifelong Survivor fan, I've watched from day one, but never gotten the chance to play and kind of test myself, so really excited to see if I can do all the things that I've watched on TV for years.
Hi, I am Drew. I am 27 years old. I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I work in emergency room pharmacy in a hospital. I'm a little nervous about my mouth and my face because I am really bad at hiding what I think on my face. If I am upset with someone, it will show.
Hi, my name is Danny. I'm 23 years old from Chicago, Illinois. I'm non-binary and use they, them pronouns, and I'm a model and creative director at a creative agency. So I'm here on season 6 of Surviving Bloomington. I have been waiting to play this game for a very long time. I brought a ton of accessories and clothes to make like fashion my thing. I couldn't care less what I'm wearing. I'm here to win. And if you stand in my way, you're gonna get run over. And if you're wearing a bad outfit, I don't need you in the video. I'm just kidding. So if you're hashtag Team Danny, keep watching because I'm about to kill these bitches.
Hi guys, so my name is Brady. I'm 19, almost 20, from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the first ever trans person to play this game and on the real show too. But so this is kind of exciting for me. My dad told me coming in that I'm super unathletic and bought me ibuprofen because he said I'm going to be hurting because I don't work out. So I'm hopefully excited to maybe lose a couple pounds, get that beach body ready. But other than that, meet new people and, collect that bag. At the end of the day, this is a cutthroat game and I'm not afraid to cut a bitch if I have to.
Welcome to Surviving Bloomington Season 6. You all are our cast.
I'm Rachel. I think I've had heart palpitations since like 4 a.m. when I woke up this morning, left around 5 from Dayton, Ohio, and here we are. When I was reviewing the cast, I didn't do a ton of research because I wanted to come in just fresh and get to know people in person. But this cast just has a stacked vibe. I just feel like I am playing with some of the best, and I have a little imposter syndrome, so my goal is to fake it till I make it.
First off, I want to congratulate all of you for being here. This is not an easy experience. I've done this 6 times now. I've played games. What you're about to go through is gonna suck. I say it's like getting a tattoo. It sucks in the moment, but after it's finished, you want to do it again. So just take a moment to congratulate yourselves that you're stepping into this extremely uncomfortable environment.
My name is Steven. I am a graduating PhD student from Texas A&M. I'm going to start as an assistant professor at Trinity University in accounting this coming fall. So a lot of transition in my life right now, and this is my graduation gift to myself. Naturally, starving in the woods with strangers, stabbing in the back for 4 days. I'm also probably the only person who realized that the images on the website had people's last names in it, so I fully stalked the entire cast and know everyone's connections.
Only one of you is going to have a perfect outcome from this thing. The other 17 of you are going to feel disappointment, and all of you are going to feel disappointment at some point. I specifically designed this game to send all of you on an emotional roller coaster. I do that on purpose, and that is why you are brave.
My name is Alex. I'm from Martinsville, which is just north of here, Martinsville, Indiana. And I think that I'm gonna do well because I'm going in playing the, I don't know anything because I've never done a multiplayer day or multi-day survivor before. So I'm going in all innocent. Hopefully people will take pity on me, saying like, oh, poor Alex, like she doesn't know what she's doing.
Anything you're nervous about?
I guess not picking up on social cues. I think that I have a pretty good understanding and will pick up if my name's being thrown out, hopefully. But past that, I'm nervous about the overall social aspect of it more than anything else.
I do want to have a moment of silence. For our good friend Boogie, who is no longer with us.
He was an amazing human. Oh, and he was such a good player. No matter whether he was getting voted out, whether he was winning the game, whether he was on crew, no matter what he was doing, he was always laughing and bringing joy. And all of these people can attest to that. So as you're playing, I encourage you to take on the Boogie mindset. Whenever you're upset about something, whenever you're feeling low in the game, just laugh like Boogie did and just keep him alive. That's part of what this event is going to be moving forward, is for Boogie. So I do want to take about 10 seconds so we can just have a moment of silence, not only for Boogie, but also for this event. The people that we're actually doing this for is people in Bloomington who are experiencing homelessness. That's the ultimate reason why we're here. You all are adding another brick to that house that we're trying to build over the next 10, 15, 20 years so this event can grow and we can actually raise a lot of money for this community. In Bloomington, especially in the winters, they are harsh here, and it is not uncommon for people to literally freeze to death. Here in Bloomington, like that happens. So again, moment of silence, not only for Boogie, but also for people who are just so much less fortunate than us and the people that we're actually here for. All right, so I'm gonna take about 10 seconds. All right, thank you all for that. All right, are we ready to see what our teams are? Yeah. All right, over here on this table. And take your little black pouch. Don't open them yet. You all can come on over and find your name. Don't open them yet. Don't open them yet. Have their little pouches.
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead and open them and see what color you are. So these are our two teams, and this year's fun because we actually have a theme to the teams. This is Surviving Bloomington Season 6, Order versus Chaos. So you all are the Order team, you all represent Chaos. We're going to see them flash.
Oh my god.
Do we?
Hang on, I have a question for you.
Yeah, I have answers.
I don't know if the sound is working great. I just paused it.
I'm hearing everything. As if anyone has issues with the sound, please type in the chat.
Was the music playing loudly? I can't hear the music very well.
I thought the music was coming over pretty well. I wasn't having any issues with the audio whatsoever.
Okay, I'm just gonna play it then.
Okay.
I'll just keep playing it.
Yeah.
It might be quieter than the intended version, but whatever.
That's why it's a rough cut. You can always tweak stuff later.
All right. We about ready?
I know.
Just get,
Ooh.
Camera people ready?
We're rolling.
All right. The first team to knock all their boxes off with the balls wins immunity. Or not immunity. Wins First team to knock all their boxes off with the balls wins reward. Survivors ready?
Yes.
Go!
right.
I think you leave us wanting more.
Hopefully the sound worked all right.
Yeah, I thought the sound's coming across great. If you looked at the comments, I think people weren't having any issues either. But whew.
Oh my god, I just saw the comments. I didn't even know that was happening this whole time.
So this will be fun for you to go back through afterwards and see.
That's hilarious. Okay.
So that was 13
CBS
hours of your life? 13 minutes, 13 hours?
That's probably more than 13 hours of my life. This season 7 or season 6, I'm probably doing 2 hours for every 1 minute of screen time.
Whew. Well, I don't know if there's anything to help, but all I can tell you is what you have so far is pretty phenomenal.
I'm excited. Let's go. I'm like yeah. All right, CBS Survivor is going to start here in a minute.
Yeah, so let you go so you can watch CBS Survivor. But Casey, thank you again for your time. I'm so happy I was able to grab you to kind of ask these questions because I know I had some really great discussions with you in Bloomington this past summer. So man, I know Casey's the person I want to talk to for this podcast.
Yeah. Hang on, watch this. Hey Jordan, say hi.
Hey!
Jordan's
oh my gosh.
here.
Okay, I'm jealous. All right,
I gotta hop off here so I can get it going.
Take care, enjoy Survivor, and I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
As for everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in, and there will be more Surviving Bloomington in the future. Have a good night.